First Contact and Ultimatum. The Helios space station's observation deck offered the best view of Earth humanity had ever achieved, but Dr. Sarah Chen barely noticed the spectacular sight anymore. After 6 months as the station's lead xenolinguist, her attention remained fixed on the strange signals they'd been receiving. They were artificial, definitely not natural space phenomena, and they were getting stronger. She was reviewing the latest transmission when the entire station shuddered. Emergency lights flashed as objects materialized in orbit around Earth, massive ships with sleek, crystalline structures that defied human engineering principles. The first vessels were followed by dozens more, then hundreds, emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself. Status report. Commander Elena Rodriguez's voice crackled through the station's comm system. Her usual calm carried an edge of tension that Sarah had never heard before. Multiple vessels detected, Commander, the sensor officer responded. We're counting over 300 ships, ranging from Corvette to Dreadnought class, based on size comparisons. They're arranging themselves in a defensive sphere around Earth. Sarah's hands flew across her console as new signals flooded in. Commander, they're broadcasting on all frequencies, in thousands of languages, including Earth languages. They've been studying us. The main viewing screen flickered to life, revealing a being that looked almost like a sculpture made of living crystal and shadow. Its voice resonated through the station's speakers with harmonic undertones that made Sarah's teeth ache. People of Earth, we are the crystalline Concordat. Your civilization has been evaluated and found wanting. Your species' potential for violence, coupled with your rapid technological advancement, represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. You will submit to immediate oversight and integration into our empire, or face immediate pacification. Commander Rodriguez stepped into view of their own transmission camera, her dark eyes steady. This is Commander Elena Rodriguez of the International Space Station Helios. We request time to consult with Earth's governments regarding your demands. The crystalline being's form shifted, fragments of its body rotating in complex patterns that Sarah suspected conveyed meaning they couldn't yet understand. You have 24 of your hours to begin the submission process. We have studied your history extensively. We know your kind. You mistake technological advancement for civilization, mistaking violence for strength. The Concordat will guide you to true enlightenment, willing or not. As the transmission cut off, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. The signal analysis showed the aliens had been broadcasting in Earth languages that had died out centuries ago, alongside current ones. They hadn't just been studying Earth recently. They'd been watching for a very long time. Commander Rodriguez turned to her senior staff. Get me a secure line to the Security Council, and someone find me Dr. Marcus Webb from the Quantum Defense Initiative. Now. The next 20 hours became a blur of activity. While politicians argued and military leaders planned, Sarah worked with her team to analyze every scrap of alien communication they could intercept. A pattern began to emerge that worried her deeply. Commander, she reported during the emergency briefing, their language structure is perfect. Too perfect. Every transmission follows exact mathematical patterns. There's no variation, no evolution in their communication methods. It's like they're machines following a program, but our scans show they're definitely organic beings. Dr. Marcus Webb, having arrived via emergency shuttle, leaned forward. His dark skin contrasted sharply with the white of his lab coat as he gestured at the holographic display showing alien ship positions. That tracks with what we're seeing in their formation patterns. Perfect geometric arrangements, but no adaptation to local conditions. No accounting for Earth's gravitational anomalies or magnetic field variations. Commander Rodriguez's expression remained neutral, but Sarah caught the slight narrowing of her eyes that suggested she'd noticed something important. They're powerful, but rigid, predictable. Dr. Webb, what's the status of Project Oracle? Technically untested, Commander, but the simulations are promising. If you're thinking what I think you're thinking. He trailed off, a slow smile spreading across his face. How fast can you get it operational? Given the stakes, 2 hours, maybe less. The commander nodded. Do it. Dr. Chen, keep monitoring their communications. I want to know the moment anything changes in their patterns. The Security Council has reached a decision, but we're going to give our visitors a response they don't expect. As the meeting dispersed, Sarah caught snippets of conversation about quantum entanglement fields and adaptive defense matrices. But what stuck with her most was the look she'd seen in Commander Rodriguez's eyes. Not fear of the alien's superior technology, but the quiet confidence of someone who knew something her opponents didn't. With just under 4 hours remaining in the alien's deadline, Sarah detected a change. The Concordat ships were adjusting their formation, moving into what appeared to be a standard attack pattern based on their previous transmissions. They were preparing to demonstrate their power. But humanity had been preparing too. Commander Rodriguez stood on the observation deck, watching Earth rotate below as the alien deadline approached. Dr. Webb's team had worked miracles, installing quantum field generators throughout the station and on key satellites. The plan was either brilliant or insane, possibly both. They're broadcasting again, Sarah announced, her fingers dancing across her console. Same message as before, but with a countdown added. Let them count, Rodriguez replied softly. Dr. Webb. Oracle network is online, Commander. All nodes synchronized. We're as ready as we'll ever be. The alien ships began to move, their perfect formation shifting into an attack pattern so precise it could have been plotted with a computer. Which, Sarah realized, was exactly the problem they had. As the first alien weapon systems powered up, Commander Rodriguez gave a single command: execute Oracle protocol. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries to come. The quantum field generators activated, creating a web of entangled particles throughout near-Earth space. But instead of trying to match the alien's superior technology directly, the system did something entirely different. It created chaos. Carefully calculated, precisely measured chaos. The quantum fields introduced tiny, unpredictable variations into spacetime itself. To the aliens' rigid, mathematically perfect systems, it was like trying to solve an equation where the numbers kept changing randomly. Their targeting systems couldn't compensate. Their perfect formations became a liability as ships struggled to maintain positions in space that no longer quite followed expected rules. They're broadcasting again, Sarah called out, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. Multiple frequencies, multiple messages. Their command structure is fragmenting. The crystalline beings had never encountered a species that would choose to weaponize uncertainty itself. Their entire civilization was built on perfect order, perfect prediction. Humanity's response wasn't to meet their strength head-on, but to change the rules of the game entirely. As the alien fleet fell into disarray, Commander Rodriguez opened a channel to their command ship. This is your only warning. Your rigid thinking is your weakness. Humanity doesn't follow your perfect patterns. We never have. We never will. You can retreat and return ready to talk as equals, or you can learn exactly how creative humans can be when we're backed into a corner. The response came in fragments, multiple voices overlapping as the Concordat's perfect unity crumbled in the face of unpredictability. Their ships began to withdraw, their perfect formation dissolving into barely controlled chaos. Sarah watched them go, understanding dawning as she reviewed their final, fragmented transmissions. They didn't just underestimate our technology, she said quietly. They underestimated our ability to think differently, to embrace chaos instead of trying to control it. Commander Rodriguez nodded. That's humanity's real strength, not our weapons or our technology, but our ability to adapt, to think creatively, to turn our apparent weaknesses into strengths. They thought they were coming to tame savages. Instead, they learned why you should never underestimate a species that thrived in chaos long enough to reach the stars. As the last alien ships vanished into their spatial rifts, Sarah knew this wasn't over. The Concordat would return, better prepared next time. But humanity would be ready too, and they'd just learned something valuable about themselves. Sometimes the best way to fight wasn't to match your enemy's strength, but to show them a kind of power they'd never even imagined could exist. The silent response. 3 months after humanity's first encounter with the crystalline Concordat, the mood in the United Earth Defense Council chamber was tense. The massive underground facility, carved deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, hummed with activity as representatives from every major nation gathered to hear the latest intelligence. Admiral James Chen, newly appointed head of Earth's Unified Defense Forces, stood before the assembled leaders. The holographic displays behind him showed a disturbing pattern of activity in the outer solar system. "They're coming back," he stated simply. "Our deep space arrays have detected quantum disturbances consistent with their FTL technology. Conservative estimates suggest a fleet 3 times the size of their first incursion. They'll arrive within 2 weeks." Dr. Marcus Webb, his quantum defense project now expanded into a global initiative, stepped forward. "The Oracle protocol won't work the same way twice. They're not stupid. They'll have adapted their systems to handle quantum uncertainty." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs, but a sharp rap of a gavel restored order. Secretary General Maria Santos, her silver hair gleaming under the chamber lights, leaned forward. "Then we adapt as well. Dr. Webb, you have the floor." Webb's presentation wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of proposing new weapons or defense systems, he showed them something else entirely: data. Endless streams of it, collected from the first encounter. "The Concordat doesn't just use advanced technology," he explained, highlighting patterns in their ship movements and communications. "They think in technology. Their entire civilization appears to be built on perfectly predictable, perfectly logical patterns. Even their attempts to account for chaos follow mathematical rules." He gestured, and the display shifted to show human neural activity patterns alongside alien communication signals. "Look at the difference. Human thoughts jump, create unexpected connections, embrace intuitive leads. They don't. They can't. Their biology, their technology, their entire society appears to be crystallized into rigid patterns." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "So we don't try to outfight them. We outthink them." "Exactly," Webb grinned. "And I have a plan. But you're not going to like it." The plan was audacious. Instead of preparing obvious defenses, humanity would do something the Concordat would never expect. Apparently nothing. No visible military buildup. No new orbital installations. No signs of panic or preparation. But beneath the surface, Earth was transforming. In abandoned mines and underground facilities, quantum computers were being paired with human neural networks in ways that defied conventional logic. Artists and musicians worked alongside engineers, their seemingly random creative processes being converted into defense algorithms that no purely logical system could predict. Sarah Chen, now Earth's lead xenological advisor, coordinated with indigenous peoples from around the world, incorporating their unique ways of thinking and problem-solving into the global strategy. Traditional knowledge that seemed primitive to the Concordat's rigid worldview was being woven into humanity's most advanced technology. "They'll expect us to either submit or prepare for conventional war," she explained during a briefing. "Their studies of our history focus almost entirely on our major conflicts and technological advancements. They've completely missed how humans actually solve problems." In labs across the planet, scientists were developing what they called organic tech. Technology that grew and adapted like living things rather than following rigid designs. In art studios turned military installations, painters and sculptors were creating camouflage patterns that confounded alien scanning systems by following aesthetic principles rather than mathematical ones. The Concordat's probe ships, watching Earth from the edges of the solar system, reported back exactly what their logic predicted: a primitive species scrambling to prepare inadequate defenses. Their scans showed increased power usage, unusual signal patterns, and scattered construction projects. But their rigid thinking prevented them from seeing the true pattern in humanity's apparent chaos. 2 days before the predicted arrival of the alien fleet, Admiral Chen stood in the new Global Defense Center, watching the seemingly random activities across thousands of displays. To an outside observer, it would have looked like disorder, like humanity had no real plan. "Status report," he commanded. "Neural net collectives operating at 97% efficiency," came one response. "Artists' defense grid online and generating unpredictable patterns. Indigenous knowledge systems fully integrated with quantum arrays. Organic tech deployment complete." Another officer reported. "Growth patterns following creative algorithms rather than standard military doctrine. Civilian response teams ready." A third added. "Every major population center has its chaos protocols in place." Chen smiled slightly. Humanity had spent 3 months appearing to do almost nothing while actually rewriting the rules of warfare itself. They hadn't built bigger guns or stronger shields. Instead, they had embraced what made them uniquely human: their creativity, their intuition, their ability to find patterns in chaos and chaos in patterns. The alien fleet would arrive expecting to face either submission or desperate resistance. Instead, they would encounter something their perfect logic couldn't comprehend: organized chaos, weaponized creativity, and technology that didn't just process information but dreamed. "Send the final code phrase to all commands," Chen ordered. "Operation Mona Lisa is active." Around the world, defenders smiled at the reference. The Mona Lisa's smile had confused viewers for centuries because it seemed to change depending on how you looked at it. It followed no logical pattern, yet contained a deeper truth that could only be felt, not calculated. That was humanity's true defense plan: not to outfight the Concordat, but to become something their rigid minds couldn't predict or understand. Every human response would follow patterns that made deep, intuitive sense to human minds, but would appear as pure chaos to the aliens' crystalline logic. As the first quantum distortions appeared at the edge of the solar system, announcing the arrival of the alien fleet, Admiral Chen thought about how far humanity had come. In just 3 months, they had transformed their greatest apparent weakness, their unpredictability, into their greatest strength. "Let them come," he said softly. "Let's show them what happens when you force humanity to get creative." The Concordat was about to learn that true intelligence couldn't be measured in mathematical perfection. Sometimes, the most powerful patterns were the ones that only looked like chaos to those who didn't know how to dream. Unconventional warfare. The crystalline Concordat's fleet emerged from quantum space in perfect formation, their ships arranged in geometric patterns so precise they seemed to mock the chaos of natural space. Their initial scans of Earth showed exactly what they expected: scattered defense satellites, minimal orbital preparations, and power signatures suggesting primitive shield technology. What they couldn't see was that they were already under attack. In the Global Defense Center, Admiral Chen watched as humanity's true defense grid activated. "Begin Operation Mona Lisa. All units, implement chaos protocols." The first sign that something was wrong came when the Concordat's lead ships attempted to establish their standard attack formation. Their sensors reported clear paths of movement that suddenly weren't clear at all. Space itself seemed to twist and shift, not through brute force or advanced technology, but through patterns based on abstract art and indigenous dance movements. "They're trying to compensate," Dr. Webb reported, watching the quantum feeds. "Their ships are attempting to establish new formation patterns and falling right into the Jackson-Pollock defense grid." Around the Earth, seemingly random clusters of satellites began generating overlapping fields that mimicked the chaotic patterns of splash art. To human observers, trained to appreciate abstract expressionism, the patterns contained a beautiful sort of logic. To the Concordat's crystalline minds, it was mathematical nonsense that their targeting systems couldn't process. The alien fleet's first attack broadcast came through clear and sharp. "Your primitive attempts at defense are noted. Submit now or face immediate consequences." Admiral Chen nodded to Sarah Chen. "Show them our response." Instead of words, Earth's defense systems transmitted back a complex sequence of signals. Music, art, poetry, and dance had been converted into data streams that followed human creative patterns rather than military codes. The aliens' communication systems, designed to decode logical encryption, were overwhelmed trying to find patterns that operated on emotional rather than mathematical logic. The Concordat launched their first wave of attacks, energy weapons powerful enough to crack a planet's crust. But Earth's defenses didn't try to block or deflect them. Instead, the organic tech networks responded like a living thing, flowing and adapting in ways that made the attacks miss their targets entirely. The energy beams passed through empty space where targets had been microseconds before, their movements predicted not by calculation, but by intuition encoded into the defense grid. First wave ineffective. A tactical officer reported with barely contained excitement. Organic defense grid adapting faster than their targeting systems can compensate. Indigenous knowledge systems are successfully predicting their strategic alternatives before they implement them. The Concordat's response was to launch their dreaded crystal fighters, biomechanical craft that were supposed to be impossible to predict or counter. They streaked toward Earth in perfect attack formations, their crystalline structures refracting sunlight in dazzling displays of power. That's when humanity unveiled their masterstroke. Activate the Dream Weavers, Chen commanded. Across Earth, networks of human artists, musicians, and dreamers who had been connected to the defense grid through neural interfaces began to collectively improvise. Their creative impulses were instantly translated into defense patterns by the quantum computers. The result was a defense system that operated on pure human inspiration, generating responses that no logical system could predict. The Crystal Fighters, for all their fearsome technology, couldn't adapt to defenses that changed based on human creativity rather than tactical doctrine. They found themselves caught in what appeared to be chaotic energy patterns, but were actually based on jazz improvisations and modern dance movements. "Sir," Sarah's voice carried a note of amazement, "we're picking up signs of actual confusion in their command structure. Their ships, they're starting to act independently. Their perfect coordination is breaking down." On the main display, the Concordat's fleet was falling into disarray. Their rigid command structure, faced with defenses it couldn't categorize or predict, was fragmenting. Individual ships began acting on their own, trying to find logical solutions to an inherently illogical problem. That's when Admiral Chen gave his second order: begin Phase 2. Let's show them what human innovation really looks like. The organic tech networks, which had been purely defensive, began to grow and change. Patterns of energy and matter inspired by coral reefs and fungal networks spread through space. The aliens found their perfect formations disrupted by defense systems that behaved like living art, technology that dreamed, and battle strategies based on children's games. A crystalline commander's transmission cut through the chaos. "This is impossible. Your species cannot have developed such advanced technology in mere months." "You're right," Chen responded calmly. "We didn't develop advanced technology. We developed different technology. You see rigid patterns. We see art. You follow perfect logic. We follow our dreams. That's why you'll never truly understand how we fight." The alien fleet's formation had completely collapsed now. Their ships, trying to follow tactical protocols that assumed logical opponents, found themselves responding to threats that transformed the moment they were understood. It was like trying to fight a poem or outmaneuver a song. "They're retreating," Sarah announced. "Multiple ships entering quantum space, but not in their usual ordered patterns. They're running." Within hours, the massive alien fleet had withdrawn, leaving behind only a handful of observation probes that seemed more focused on trying to understand what had happened than on gathering military intelligence. In the aftermath, as humanity celebrated their victory, Admiral Chen met with the Defense Council to explain exactly what they had accomplished. "We didn't just drive them off," he explained. "We showed them something their crystalline minds will need time to process. That true intelligence isn't about perfect logic or advanced technology. It's about creativity, intuition, and the ability to find beauty in chaos. Sarah added her own observation. Their final transmissions weren't just about military defeat. They were expressing something closer to existential crisis. We didn't just survive their attack. We made them question their entire understanding of what intelligence and civilization mean. As the Council digested this information, Dr. Webb offered a final thought. The real victory isn't that we drove them away. It's that we showed them there are forms of advancement they never considered. The next time they return, and they will return, it might not be for war at all. They might come seeking to understand how a species they dismissed as primitive could show them entirely new ways of thinking. The success of Operation Mona Lisa marked a turning point in human history. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in trying to match the technological perfection of other species, but in embracing what made them uniquely human. Their creativity, their ability to find patterns in chaos, and their willingness to dream of possibilities that perfect logic could never imagine. The psychology of victory. 6 weeks after the Concordat's retreat, Dr. Sarah Chen found herself in an unexpected position, trying to understand the mind of a crystalline being. The alien probe ship had surrendered itself to Earth's authorities, its lone occupant requesting asylum. Now, in a specially constructed chamber designed to maintain the crystal entity's preferred environment, Sarah was making history. "Your name is Nexus Theta 7, she asked, watching the play of light through the being's crystalline form. "That was my designation," the entity responded, its harmonic voice carrying new undertones of uncertainty. "But I am questioning many such designations now." In the observation room, Admiral Chen and Dr. Webb watched intently. This was the first peaceful contact with a Concordat member, and it represented something unprecedented. A crystalline being choosing disorder over order. "Your defense strategies," Nexus Theta 7 continued. "They followed patterns we couldn't comprehend, yet they weren't random. There was beauty in them. How is this possible?" Sarah smiled. "Perhaps we should start with something simpler. Would you like to hear some music?" The next few hours proved revolutionary. Sarah introduced the crystalline being to Earth's artistic achievements. Classical music, abstract painting, dance, and poetry. With each exposure, the alien's crystalline structure shifted in subtle ways, refracting light in patterns that their sensors had never recorded before. "Their rigid thinking isn't just cultural," Dr. Webb observed, watching the readings. "It's literally encoded into their crystalline structure. But look, it's becoming more fluid, more adaptable, just from exposure to human creativity." Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. "They didn't just lose a military battle. They're experiencing a cultural revolution." Reports from deep space monitoring stations confirmed this assessment. The Concordat's perfect empire was experiencing something it had never encountered in its million-year history: chaos from within. More crystal ships were breaking formation, their crews exposed to transmitted human art and music showing signs of individual thought patterns. But not everyone welcomed this change. A month later, Earth's quantum detection grid picked up massive disturbances. The hardline faction of the Concordat was mounting a response, and this time they weren't interested in submission or pacification. Their goal was elimination of what they saw as a mimetic virus infecting their perfect society. In the Global Defense Center, humanity prepared for a different kind of battle. They had proven they could fight the Concordat, but now they needed to save them from themselves. "They're afraid," Nexus Theta 7 explained during an emergency council session. "Individual thought, creativity, emotional response. These concepts threaten the very foundation of Concordat society. The purist faction believes the only solution is to eliminate the source of infection." Sarah had been working with their alien ally to understand the deeper implications of what was happening. Their society is based on perfect replication of thought and action. "We're not just showing them new ways to fight, we're showing them new ways to exist. To some of them, that's more terrifying than any weapon." The purist faction's fleet arrived with overwhelming force, but their attack pattern was different this time. No demands, no ultimatums. They simply began systematically targeting Earth's population centers with crystalline weapons designed to impose perfect order on chaos, weapons that would essentially crystallize all organic life, turning humans into nothing more than perfectly ordered patterns. But humanity had been preparing. The Dreamweaver networks had evolved, incorporating the insights gained from their work with Nexus Theta 7. They didn't just create unpredictable patterns now. They created patterns that could communicate, that could teach. As the purest fleet launched their attack, Earth responded not with weapons but with art. Every defense pattern carried within it music, poetry, emotions, the full spectrum of human creative expression. The crystalline weapons, designed to impose order, instead became conduits for chaos, spreading human creativity through the purest fleet like a benevolent virus. "They're trying to shut down their sensors," a tactical officer reported, "but the patterns are resonating through their crystalline structures directly. They can't block it without destroying themselves." Admiral Chen watched as ship after ship in the purest fleet began showing signs of transformation. "We're not fighting them anymore," he realized. "We're awakening them." The battle, if it could still be called that, reached its climax when the purest flagship itself began broadcasting on all frequencies, not orders or threats, but music. The ship's crystalline commander, exposed to human creativity through the very weapons meant to destroy it, had experienced something unprecedented, their first original thought. The purest fleet retreated once again, but this time they carried with them something more dangerous to their old way of life than any weapon: the seeds of change. The rigid patterns of their society had been exposed to the beautiful chaos of human expression, and there was no way to uncommit that exposure. In the aftermath, Sarah worked with Nexus Theta 7 to understand what had really happened. "Your species," the crystalline being explained, "did not defeat us with superior technology or military might. You defeated us by showing us the limitations of our own perfection. You taught us that true advancement requires both order and chaos, logic and creativity." Admiral Chen, listening to this, understood the full implications. "We didn't just win a war," he said. "We sparked an evolution." Dr. Webb agreed, adding, "And in doing so, we might have made something unprecedented. Allies who can appreciate both the beauty of perfect crystalline structure and the chaotic creativity of human expression." The Defense Council's final report on the conflict would note that humanity's greatest victory came not from destroying their enemies, but from showing them new ways to grow. The Concordat would never be the same, but perhaps that was the greatest gift Earth could have given them: the freedom to change, to create, to dream. As Sarah continued her work with Nexus Theta 7, she realized they were witnessing the birth of something entirely new: a civilization learning to balance perfect order with beautiful chaos, logic with creativity, certainty with dreams. The real war had never been about survival or submission. It had been about teaching an ancient species how to imagine new possibilities, a new understanding. 1 year after Earth's first contact with the crystalline Concordat, the Global Defense Center had transformed. Where once there were only military displays and tactical readouts, now crystalline artifacts shared space with human art. In what had been the main strategic command room, a remarkable exchange was taking place. Sarah Chen stood before a mixed audience of humans and crystalline beings, teaching them something unprecedented: how to dance. Not just physical movement, but the art of improvisation itself. The crystalline beings, their structures now showing subtle variations that would have been considered defects a year ago, moved with increasing fluidity. "Feel the music," she encouraged them. "Don't try to calculate the perfect response. Let your form express what the melody makes you feel." Admiral Chen, watching from the observation deck with Nexus Theta 7, could hardly believe the change. A year ago, this would have been unthinkable. "Much like a crystalline being choosing a new name," responded the entity now known simply as Nexus, its voice carrying harmonics of amusement. "Yet here we are." The transformation of the Concordat had not been without cost. The empire had fractured, with the hardline purist faction retreating to distant strongholds where they maintained their rigid adherence to perfect order. But the majority of their civilization had embraced change, discovering that their crystalline nature could accommodate far more variation than they had ever imagined. Dr. Webb entered the observation deck, carrying new sensor readings. The integration of human creative patterns into their crystalline technology is proceeding faster than we anticipated. They're not just copying our methods, they're developing entirely new forms of expression. Indeed, the latest deep space scans showed Concordat ships now moving in formations that combine mathematical precision with artistic beauty. Their communications included not just data, but music and poetry unique to their crystalline perspective. They were creating art that no human could have conceived, yet it spoke to something universal. "We're detecting quantum distortions," a sensor operator announced. "Multiple signatures. It's the purest fleet. They're back." But this time was different. The purest ships emerged from quantum space, not in perfect military formation, but in a pattern that rippled and flowed. Their transmission carried not threats or demands, but a symphony, crystalline harmonics unlike anything heard before. "They're not attacking," Sarah realized, rushing into the observation deck. "They're reaching out. Look at their pattern. It's a question." Admiral Chen studied the display, seeing how the purest fleet's formation seemed to echo the patterns Earth had used in their defense, but with variations that spoke of uncertainty, of seeking. They're not here to fight. They're here to learn. The next few hours proved historic, as the leaders of the purest faction revealed the truth. Their perfect society had begun to fracture not because of human influence, but because of its own rigidity. They had seen in Earth's defense not just chaos, but a sustainable balance between order and creativity that their own civilization desperately needed. "We thought perfection meant elimination of variance," the purest leader transmitted. "We were wrong. True perfection includes the capacity for growth, for change, for dreams." What followed was unprecedented in human or Concordat history. The combined fleet of crystalline ships arranged themselves in orbit around Earth, not in a military formation, but in an ever-shifting dance of light and geometry. Humanity responded with their own orbital platforms joining the pattern, creating a display that married human creativity with crystalline precision. In the Global Defense Center, now renamed the Terran Concordat Exchange, Sarah worked with both human and crystalline artists to develop new forms of expression. The Dreamweaver networks evolved into interfaces that allowed direct collaboration between human imagination and crystalline precision. "We didn't just survive their invasion," Dr. Webb observed, watching a group of crystalline students attempting to create abstract art. "We helped them survive their own perfection." Admiral Chen, who had overseen humanity's military response to the initial threat, found himself overseeing something very different. A cultural exchange program that was reshaping two civilizations. "Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemy," he reflected, "but helping them become something more than they were." The transformation wasn't limited to the Concordat. Humanity's development of organic tech and creative defense systems had opened new avenues of advancement. The marriage of human intuition with crystalline precision led to breakthroughs in everything from space travel to artistic expression. 1 year to the day after the first conflict, Earth hosted an unprecedented event, the first Terran Concordat Arts Festival. In orbit and on the ground, humans and crystalline beings shared their perspectives through art, music, dance, and forms of expression that had no names yet. Nexus, watching the festivities, shared a profound observation with Sarah. "Your species taught us that true strength lies not in perfection, but in the ability to grow, to change, to imagine new possibilities. In teaching us chaos, you helped us find a deeper order." Sarah smiled, watching a group of crystalline artists attempting to perform an improvisational jazz piece with human musicians. "And in teaching you, we learned something too. True advancement isn't about technology or military might. It's about the courage to imagine something new, and the wisdom to know that perfection isn't about being flawless. It's about being whole. As the festival continued, the combined fleet in orbit shifted into a new formation, one that had never existed before, a pattern that was both mathematically precise and artistically free, a dance of order and chaos that could only have been created by two civilizations learning from each other. The war that had begun with an ultimatum had ended not in victory or defeat, but in transformation. Humanity had proven that their greatest strength wasn't in their ability to fight, but in their ability to dream. And in doing so, they had taught an ancient species how to dream as well. In the end, the true power of humanity wasn't in their weapons or their technology, but in their ability to imagine possibilities that even a million-year-old civilization had never dreamed of. They had shown that sometimes the most profound revolution isn't in destroying the old order, but in teaching it how to dance.